Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us here on what promises to be perhaps the most exciting session of the day-long event that you've had. We promise to make this as exciting as possible, as provocative as possible. Well, these are the teams now, and we're going to make the rules up as we go along. And since we haven't had too much time before we started to make the rules up, let's make the rules up here with the House. The team on my right starts for the motion, and then we're going to flip, and they will go against the motion, and then you'll get the opportunity to go for the motion. So Sumant and Piyush will start, and then we'll come to Vipul and TP. And let's give each team 3 minutes to start with. We'll get 3 minutes of rebuttal from the other side as well, and then come back and flip the discussion. So the sense of the House, we'll start by getting a sense of the House before we actually start. And the topic, as Arunabha pointed out, this House believes that the energy transition will make billions of millionaires. So what's the sense of the House? Are we actually going to see billions of millionaires being created on account of the energy transition? If you can all raise your hands if you're for the motion. Oh, okay. There's a few. All right, so you're going to have a tough time to start with, Sumant Sinha. Your time starts now. It's 6:10, so we get the bell going with 3 minutes for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Shireen. Thank you, CEEW, for inviting me to speak at this very interesting debate topic. So look, I'm going to do a little bit, make a little bit of a different assumption. I'm going to say that there are two parts to this topic. One is energy transition, and I fully understand that last year that was already debated, but nevertheless, I think it behooves us to just re-examine whether there is in fact an energy transition happening. And the second part is the billions of millionaires, right? Now, I'm not really going to take the billions of millionaires literally, right? Because billions is a large number of people. The population of the world itself is 7 billion, so billions of that is a huge number. So I would say, I'm going to interpret it and say that is it going to create a lot of wealth?
Yeah.
And is that wealth going to be spread out fairly among a lot of people, right? So that's the way I'm going to interpret the topic. Now, so let's look at the various facts. The first question is there an energy transition actually happening or not? And I would say, yes, certainly there is, because clearly, we are in the midst of this big third, let's say, energy transition. We had wood to coal, coal to petroleum, and now petroleum into, let's say, renewable energy sources. And there's a second aspect of this energy transition as well, which is electrification. Yeah. Right? So it's in the energy part, the electricity basket is actually going to start increasing as we move to electric vehicles and so on. So I think that's also part of the energy transition, and that is happening as well, along with the overall scheme of things. Now let's look at the size of the transition, right? If you look at the size of the transition, last year, the total amount of investments in energy altogether was about $1.8 trillion, right? Out of that, renewable energy was only $300 billion. So that gives you a sense of how much room there is to grow in renewable energy, becoming a much bigger part of the overall energy basket going forward. And if you look at the overall, go beyond CapEx and look at the actual amount of, the GDP, I would say, the global GDP is about $50 trillion. At least I would say 5 to 10% of that must be coming from energy. And so that tells you that the total size of the basket is perhaps $5 to maybe $5 trillion or thereabouts. Yeah. So both in terms of investment and in terms of total size, it's a huge opportunity. Now, the other interesting part of this opportunity is that it's democratic and it's disruptive, right? Democratic because it's going to actually put the opportunity to generate sources of energy into everybody's, individuals' hands. And that, in some senses, is the great opportunity and scalability of solar, that it goes both up and it goes down, right? The second part is it's going to be disruptive because it is going to mean that grids, technology, there's going to be so much change that's going to happen that it's going to really empower the common man. And I think what that is going to mean is that there are going to be lots of opportunities for individuals to create wealth and create new businesses in areas such as digital, rooftop, asset management, virtual power plants when you have a single market and so on. So I think all of that is going to create tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurs to create new businesses. And lastly, because I have 14 seconds left now, I would say that while it is, it may not literally create millionaires, but the fact is if a poor homeowner suddenly finds that he's getting access to electricity that he never had before, he's going to feel like a millionaire, even if he's not actually a millionaire. Thank you.
Well done, Sumant Sinha, right on time. So, great start there. Piyush, let me come to you now. And some of the issues raised here by Sumant, of course, the energy transition, that evolution has started, it's only progressing further. Democratization, wealth creation, value creation, new entrepreneurial energy that is being unleashed on account of this. But, you know, to pick up on the point that was being made by the minister just a short while ago, and maybe you can pick up on that and link what we just heard here from Sumant. How much of a problem is the current regulatory environment when we talk about policy predictability, pricing predictability, and is that going to be the biggest challenge in making an economy of billions of millionaires who will thrive from this business?
Okay, well, we'll talk about challenges when we come to opposing the motion, but at the moment we are for the motion. So let me start by supporting the case of my colleague here, Sumant, who made a great start. And let's remind ourselves that energy has created opportunity and wealth for mankind from times immemorial. So humans do well when they get access to resources, and that's what energy has done for them. It's created leverage in human effort and has allowed people to do more and achieve more. It is therefore unsurprising that if you look at history, there is a very strong correlation between energy and wealth. Look at all the wealthiest. I mean, they were either supplying energy, Rockefellers, or they were consuming energy to create wealth by multiplying output. So when we talk about creating billions of millionaires, we have to think about how do we place the power of this energy, the income generation, the wealth creation potential of energy in the hands of every single person who we count in those billions. And how do we do that? Well, there is good news. And the good news is that the technology has now evolved to a point when it can be generated in a decentralized way, where it is meant to be consumed, where it is meant to be used in the form of a distributed solar panel. So why not leverage that? And we're starting to leverage that. Why is this part of energy transition significant? We talk a lot about energy transition from traditional fuels to modern fuels, electric vehicles, storage. But this is one aspect, the decentralized nature of energy generation. A unique opportunity that we have today is an aspect of energy transition that is less spoken about. But that's where we're going to change the lives of those kids who are living in rural homes, have to study in the evening hours but don't get reliable access to energy. We're talking about shopkeepers. When we talk about those billion people who have to shut their shops today with sunset because there is no reliable electricity after sunset. So decentralized energy is now creating that unique opportunity of placing that wealth creation machine in the hands of these people. And therefore, I think I strongly believe, like my colleague here, that yes, energy in its current form has the potential to create opportunities for those billions who otherwise would have been left out of development, and all of them can potentially be millionaires.
Well, you still got 23 seconds if you want to add a very quick line. I'm just being fair here. You just have 18 seconds more to go.
That's all right. Okay. I think I've said enough. I've made my points.
We'll add the 13 seconds to you in round two. Okay, gentlemen, let me come to you. And TP, I'll start by asking you for your 3 minutes of rebuttal. Distributed, decentralized models, and that is what is going to make this work. The question, though, is it going to be viable in the long term?
First of all, I think I appreciate the great points my colleagues made across the aisle. From my perspective, it sounds weird negotiating a point when I'm in the industry, but let me just say clearly this. I really don't believe this industry is going to make millionaires out of billionaires. The reason being the following. If you look at it around the world, and if you add up all the largest 10 utilities of the last 20 years, and you see the market cap of all these utilities, there's barely 1 or 2 utilities that actually has a positive outcome. Yeah. And the reason is this. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter which industry you're in. The world is all about economics. And in our industry, I don't think I've seen any industry in the world, maybe telecom is the only other exception, where in an industry where we were getting 18 rupees a kilowatt hour 8 years ago, and today we get 2 rupees 50. In that kind of price compression, when you don't have returns, capital is going to go to the industry where they're going to get a fair return. And that's the biggest challenge we're going to face in our industry going forward. Secondly, if you look at the way assets are valued around the world, you can pour billions of dollars into assets, And the actual value that people are valuing these assets is declining. Look at the top 10 companies in the world. Why is it that out of the top 10 companies in the world, the top 6 or 7 are Google, Apple, and all these IT and digital companies? There are no utilities out there, despite the fact that the value of the assets that large utilities around the world have are in hundreds of billions of dollars. So therefore, I think this energy transition, we're entering a new phase of the way companies are valued, where the value of companies is not in the amount of assets you have, but it's in the business model you have that's going to create value going forward. The best case example is British Gas. I don't know if how many people know that British Gas is now Centrica. Centrica used to own some of the largest, had some of the biggest assets in the world in power generation. Today they own no assets. They have 2 nuclear plants left, which are sort of winding down right now, and they've moved completely into the new age of energy. So therefore, I really feel that the way we think about energy companies around the world is going to change dramatically. Look what's happening in Europe. Today, the value of assets being bought at about 4 to 5% yield. How do you make a return at 4 to 5% yield when the price compression is so high, given the fact that at the end of the day, the performance of all these assets are not producing it the way it should be? I don't know if any of you saw yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a report that Kotak Mahindra Bank brought out that there are 320 billion rupees of debt in the renewable energy industry right now that's being downgraded or is on ratings watch. So it's a time bomb waiting to happen. So I just feel what's going to happen in the renewable energy industry is what happened in thermal a few years ago.
I hope not.
So let me just end very quickly by just quickly highlighting the 4 or 5 things that I just mentioned. The first one, it's all about economics. It doesn't matter which industry you're in. If we're not going to make a fair return, capital is going to go where they get a fair return. 2, at the end of the day, in a country where you have uncertainty of policy and a declining tariff, I just don't see the way forward in this industry.
All right, great start. On the other side, even the well-fought battle there, TP. So return on investment, a big question mark. Access to capital, big question mark. Unit economics, a big question mark. You want to add to the list of question marks that this industry is going to have to deal with?
Of course. Where would be the fun without that? So as someone who's investing in the industry, I must stress in a public forum that this is what I'm about to list are really the watch-outs. Okay, and there are many. So let me basically give you 5 watch-outs. Okay, number 1, power sector investment, and I'm focusing on India. The last 4 years have been slowing 19% a year every year. The top 12 IPPs of the country today make a return of negative 1.3% on equity. So that's one watch out. If investors aren't making money, you can forget about making any millionaires. Number 2, we have a willingness to invest, but do we as a country have a willingness to charge for power? If we don't have a willingness to charge, or until we develop a willingness to charge, all we'll create are thousands of NPAs as opposed to billions of millionaires. Number 3, the kind of transition that all 3 people have talked about so far involve massive, gut-wrenching transformations at the customer face at the discom end. Unless we are able to create the discoms of the future, this doesn't mean others don't have to change, but unless the biggest change happens in the discoms, we are able to create the discoms of the future, all we'll be doing is exporting the ills of the power sector into other sectors like manufacturing, like infrastructure, like banking, etc., etc. So how do we create sustainable discoms of the future? Number 4, I read this in one of the papers the other day. The term was policy whiplash. We've moved from an extreme view of renewables being everything to a view that renewables may not be everything, to in some states now, we don't want renewables at all. So as long as we have policy whiplash, we are going to have all the other problems up there exacerbated, made much worse, and we just stay in that in sort of a low investment cycle. And finally, the last watch out is not so much for policy or industry. The last watch out is really for the individual players. Even if we solve all of these, you could make the case that the flip side of the socialist part or the democratic part is that entry barriers are very low. Entry barriers are too low. Any industry that has such low entry barriers, you cannot create value long term. So the question really is, how do players make entry barriers, whether through intellectual property, whether through digitization, whether through proprietary footholds on assets, et cetera, et cetera. So those were my 5 points. In conclusion, I'd just like to say, forget about, well, maybe you'll make billions of millionaires if they start as multimillionaires.
So this, after the aviation business, this could be the next business where it's a good way to lose your money. All right, let's get the sense of the house now. You've had the first round from both teams. So let me put the question back at you. We had less than a 50% vote when we started this, and let's see how our teams have done so far. This house believes that the energy transition will make billions of millionaires. Those for the motion, if you could raise your hands now. This was the team that was for the motion. Those for the motion, raise your hands. Okay, barely a handful. Those against the motion, raise your hands. All right, round one going to TP and Vipul. Well done, guys. Now we're gonna flip sides. So Sumant, Sinha, and Piyush, your turn now to take over from where TP and Vipul left off. So you're going to bat against the argument this time around. And Sumant, your time starts now. Your agility, your agility as a lawyer will be in display.
So let me again start with the same issues that I started with earlier. Is there really an energy transition happening? Because that's also part of the topic. And I would actually, contest that actually the energy transition is really, really very slow. And it's going to take a very long time for it to play out. For example, there are companies that are making forecasts that peak oil will perhaps be reached 60, 70 years later, right? Renewable energy investments really have been flat globally for the last 4 or 5 years. So the question really is, are we really moving to a situation where there is any energy transition happening at all? So that's really point number one. The second issue is, if you look at the overall the topic itself, the second part of the topic, billions of millionaires. Now, even if we are very kind to the topic and say that millionaires is to be interpreted in the rupee sense, it still is about $140,000 per head, right? To create billions, now billions would imply at least 2 billion, right? So I'm taking this very literally here right now. Now 2 billion out of 7 to earn $140,000.
As opposed to the previous round where you were very philosophical.
That to me sounds really excessive, right? I mean, it seems like how can 2 billion or 7 billion people in the world suddenly be $140,000, $150,000 in terms of value? So I think from that standpoint itself, from a very technical standpoint and argument, the topic to me sort of falls flat on its face right there. Okay, but let's come to the third part, the point that some of my colleagues from across the aisle made. I won't say that I don't agree with them fully, but that is from my other hat. I would say that from this hat, I actually do agree with them. And if you look at it, if you, for example, look at the oil and gas sector. Is it a very democratic industry? Is everybody going out and drilling their own oil wells? The answer is no. It's a very concentrated industry. Yeah. These are high capital intensive sectors. Yeah. They require large, billions of dollars of investments. You need to have very large companies that do that. Right? And you have to manufacture energy, renewable energy at scale to get really the cost down to the lowest level. So to me, it doesn't appear that you're going to have a lot of people competing with the large guys. The industry is going to get consolidated and concentrated in the hands of a few in the hands of a few large corporations. And those corporations, by the way, are, as my colleagues pointed out, also not really going to be making a lot of money because the sector is in difficulty. The regulatory environment, the policy environment, most governments are getting it wrong right now. They're not getting it right. We heard Suresh Prabhu talking about the regulatory aspect. That is obviously not going well. So if you ask me honestly, the whole transition towards clean energy is perhaps not happening as rapidly as it needs to. But in the process of doing that, whatever players there were on the thermal side or the conventional side are also going under because the whole policy environment is so unclear. So in actual fact, if you look at it, the whole power sector, and perhaps by extension the energy sector, is actually doing very poorly. And I really don't see a wide sort of set of new millionaires being created in this industry at all.
Well done, well done. Now, on the other side now, batted valiantly once again, full marks to you. Piyush, everything wrong with this business, cash guzzling, it's only going to be the big boys that will survive. Forget about democratization, decentralization, and distributed models. Not going to work.
Well, let me just get the look right first. I must look depressing when I'm talking about depressing matters. So, well, as much as I'm enthusiastic about the technological potential of energy and the point to which it has evolved in creating billions of millionaires, I'm equally unsure, uncertain, and questioning about the financial potential and the potential of energy to create financial returns, at least in the foreseeable future. Why do I say that? I actually think the premise of the question itself is wrong. Returns and investment opportunity for billions. Well, where is that? Let's talk about them one by one. So, is it possible today for billions to access investments in the energy space? Absolutely no. There have been a few examples in the US, but you've all heard of companies like Sun Edison. So there were two steps, one step forward and two steps backwards. We've had some mishaps in the sector. Similarly, we keep hearing and talking about blockchains. Yeah, won't it be wonderful for me or one of you to jointly invest in the rooftop of a shop owner in rural India? Great idea, but there is no mechanism today. We're still sort of light years away from any of that becoming real. So in short, the access to investment opportunities in the energy sector doesn't exist. We're not talking about returns yet. But now I talk about returns. Well, where are the returns? There are no returns either. There is no investment opportunity available
We've got one
to
who's
billions.
already left. He's walked away from the stage altogether.
And there are no returns. So, or more accurately put, there are no universally available financial returns which are available in many other sectors. Energy as a sector, I think, has been economically unprofitable from its very inception. The whole economics are confused because governments have taken it upon themselves to force energy transitions. There is a social agenda which gets mixed up with the economic agenda, and all of it put together creates uncertainty. I shudder at the thought of what might happen with all the news coming out of Andhra Pradesh. We've all seen in the past how overnight all the utility-scale solar farms and wind farms in Italy and Spain became bankrupt because of the retroactive change in tariffs. So all those issues are still very much current and live and problematic when we talk about creating financial returns for billions. So again, I must go back to my depressing look, but unfortunately it's a sad reality that I don't think we are on course to create that opportunity for billions yet.
Thank you very much, Piyush. Well done. Policy confusion, policy coercion, default, no visibility in terms of return on investments, and this side now batting against the motion. This team won the previous round. Let's see if they can now convert the audience to the other side. So, TP, should we start?
Sure. Let me just start by asking a simple question. How many of you know Greta? Right? Okay, so most of you know Greta. So Greta's this Norwegian girl, I think, which is really at the center of this whole debate about climate change. And she's 16 years old, and she's captured the imagination of what this whole energy transition is. And for the first time, you're seeing things happening in London as well, where you have these protesters stopping roads right in Oxford Street. So I think we are at the cusp of an incredible energy transition that's happening in the world. And it's really driven by this. Today in this energy transition, it's you as a consumer and me as a consumer that's at the heart of this transition. And why do I say that? I came home one day and I saw the electricity bill at home was 75,000 rupees. And I thought to myself, this is the most bizarre thing, right? But this is the problem with electricity. Once you get your bill, it's too late. You've got to pay, otherwise they cut off your bill. So what did I put? I put a solar plant on my roof. It's bifacial panels. I export more power back into the grid than I consume power. As a result, my electricity bill is zero, right? Now think about this. If all of us in this country, 1 billion people, could produce their own electricity and sell the excess electricity back into the grid, we will transform energy consumption in this country. So I think that's where the world of this energy transition is going to go, is that this dramatic decline in energy costs around the world is what's going to make a difference. I didn't think when I started out on this journey, when cost of panels was $6 a watt, today it's 25 cents a watt, I didn't think this level of dramatic decline in cost would happen, which gives all of us the power to become a consumer as well. The second point, transformation of technology and disruption of technology. What's happening in the world of storage, what am I going to do in my house, is the fact that I'm going to be now, I have 2 diesel gensets and an inverter. I'm going to put up a storage system at my home. I'll throw out my 2 diesel gensets, and the grid will become my backup power. Now, the reason I can do that is that the cost at which I can provide a storage solution in my house is a fraction of what I could do even a few years ago. And that, again, is transformation. So think about this. All of us go off grid. We produce our own energy. Tomorrow, I have an electric car. I'll store my energy in the electric car, and I'll run my whole house from my electric car storage and the system that I have at home. So I think it's exactly this reason what's going to change it. And the last reason I'll quickly say is this. The per capita consumption in the United States is 14,400 kilowatt hours per person per year. In China, that number is close to about 4,000. In India, I think today we are somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200.
The point that everyone from a farmer, so whether it's Bharat or it's India, whether it's the Aam Aadmi, whether it's the suit boot guy, the small guy, the big guy, there's an opportunity for everyone across this transition. Number 3, for people who don't have capital, this is probably the biggest explosion of business service models that's going to happen in the next 10 years. Whether it's ESCOs, RESCOs, digitization, etc., the private equity funded entrepreneurial model or even the low capital funded equity models are going to be exploding. Number 4, it's not just energy in its traditional sense. Manufacturing gets transformed. Just take the oil industry and transportation as one large example. And I'm taking automobiles particularly because it's one of the largest multipliers in the world. 80% of diesel today goes either into trucks, into pump sets, into captive power, or into railways. Take those 4 uses. Within 10 years, they'll be fundamentally transformed to electricity. As that kind of a upheaval happens, the entire usage of energy that you see around you is going to change. So it's not a small change. Manufacturing changes across the industry. That creates opportunity. That creates entrepreneurs. And finally, I would say, if you just look at the most recent order that's come out of the Ministry of Power around receivables, we're learning. Yes, there's a lot of room for pessimism, but we're learning. We are realizing how far we can go and where we need to actually draw the line. So I'll just stop there. Simple point. This is the most massive transfer of value from all industries to energy as the cost of manufacturing and the cost of energy in manufacturing reduces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vipul. I just want to point out he had 5 watch-outs and only 4 positives that he listed out. But okay, let's get the sense of the house once again. Those who believe for the motion that we are going to see billions of millionaires being created because of this energy transition, could you raise your hands now, please? Okay, little better than previously. And those who believe against the motion, if you could raise your hands. This is sort of a split now. Should we do it? It's a tie. It's a tie. It's a tie. It's a tie. Let's quickly make up the rules. Okay. So we'll go to the audience now. We'll go to the audience because we do have a tie now. So let's go to the audience. The best answer from the team to the audience questions will win. Arnab, I'll come to you at the end. But since you've got somebody there with their hand extended, the gentleman at the back. I'll come to you as well, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Ratnakar Gidam. I used to be advisor in the Planning Commission. I will tell the fact. We have got, at present, not more than 5 lakh millionaires in India, when we actually count in the dollar. Around 5 lakhs millionaire. Okay, number 1. We are adding about 7,300 per year. That is the actually statistical fact about that credit and slow is something like that report is there. Now, if that is the way, if we are talking about, it is not only the solar, that energy sector, but there are also some other digital, particularly this, that digital technology, where the potential there are high potential for creating the millionaires and billionaires.
Yes.
Now, even if that is also taken into account, it is not more than 7,500 people will be per annum getting actually into the millionaire club.
So you don't agree with the motion?
Yes, that's right. Okay.
Okay, all right. We were hoping for a question to end the tie break. Yes, I hope it's a question and not a comment. We have to get this tie sorted out.
It's a question only. I am Panda, Secretary from the Telangana State Regulatory Commission. What will be the regulatory...
Thank God not Andhra Pradesh, sir. You would have had a long line of people up next to you. Go ahead.
So what will be the regulatory, just like our Suresh Prabhu, Honorable Minister told, there is a regulation challenge and global regulation has to be done. So just a question to the panel, what will be the regulatory challenges?
Don't do what Andhra Pradesh is doing. First up, don't do what Andhra Pradesh is doing. The rest they can add. Sumant, you want to take a stab at that?
So what is required from a regulatory standpoint? I think the most important thing is stability of policies. We can't have a situation where one state makes a policy, there's a change in government, or there's a change in a minister, or there's a change in a secretary, or there's a change in an MD of a distribution company, and policies change, positions change, and so on. So I think that is the first and most important thing. The second thing is that you have to have policies that are also future looking. So you can actually give investors some sense of what is going to come in the future so they can plan for what they want to do in the country. And the third thing is very critical is that while you want to give the right kind of tariffs to the end consumer, you also have to give the right kind of returns to capital providers, because capital providers have a lot of options in the world. They can invest in energy, they can invest in 20 other sectors, they can invest in India, they can invest in hundreds of other countries, right? So you have to give the right kind of returns to capital providers as well. So I think if you can construct a policy environment consisting of all of these factors, then that is going to be very critical to attract more capital.
So normally policies are defined by the government. In alignment with the policy, regulations are framed by the regulator. So it has to be taken
Yes,
at
and
the
that is the
government
other
level.
problem that we have, that you have a central regulator, you have a state regulator, and
Correct.
confusion on account of that as well. Okay. Yes, sir, you have a question, sir.
Thank you.
Question, not a comment, please. Yes. Question. Yes, do you have a question? We're doing questions, sir. This is the tie-break round, so we're taking only questions. Anybody who has a question, if you could raise your hands, please. Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, for the billion of common people, how can we create the positive intent or the tendency to invest into the solar rooftop or renewable energy, where the billions of common people are actually the subsidized consumers?
Okay. Since you were for the motion in the last round, take a stab at that, Vipul.
Show them the money.
At the starting
Show
point,
them the money. Sorry?
Their tariff is already heavily subsidized.
No.
What they can
There are many ways to show them the money. At the end of the day, the Indian consumer is one of the most commercially savvy consumers in the world and one of the most commercially sensitive consumers. If you can show them how they're going to make money off it, it'll spread.
Yeah, because we are seeing the commercial and industrial, they are putting the solar rooftop because they are subsidizing and not the subsidized consumers.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead, sir. If you can, you've got the mic. Go ahead.
Hi, Manu from CEEW.
Louder, please.
It's not working. So I will start from where Piyush mentioned about access to investments. And if you look at any big company sort of coming up, most of these companies are sort of financed by private markets. So I think even if energy transition is a big investment opportunity, I think the access to investing is quite a strong point. Even if energy transition creates or sort of wants a lot of investment, there won't be enough opportunities for masses to actually invest in it.
Okay.
So I think that's quite a strong point for you, for the House to decide whether it actually would create billions of millionaires.
Okay. Well, we'll take that into consideration. I'm going to go to the end. Sir, if you could stand up, please. Yes. So that they can spot you and get you a microphone.
Thanks. Question. How much would a parent whose child is suffering from air pollution and has sickness pay for the health and for a clean environment? How much is that worth?
I think no amount of money is going to be enough, and that is a serious challenge that I think governments and the industry need to work together.
Can I just
to
share a
deal
small
with.
perspective
Yes.
from our own field experience?
Yeah.
I don't think many of you realize that the first investment that a rural family ever makes in healthcare is actually a fan for mosquito prevention for their infants, for children, so that they don't contract diseases. So we must understand the role of energy in achieving human development.
Yeah.
Much before we talk about social development. We can make all interesting forecasts about GDP growth and whatever, but if you're not going to increase total factor productivity of those children growing in rural India, among those billions who we are aspiring to make millionaires here, we're not going to make any shift in our numbers.
Yep. Arunabha, I'll give you the...
Hi.
Okay, we still have...
Hi. Very quick question, Shireen here.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Who in the industry is making money? I represent a manufacturer.
Who in the industry is making money? Who wants to start first? Nobody? No takers for this question?
The consumers.
That's the googly question.
But that's a good point.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good point, because the sad part, and this is where we all debate, we guys in power generation companies, we are not, the OEMs are not, but the really sad part about this whole debate is even the consumers not making. Because we are getting squeezed by selling power at 253, whatever it is. But all of us at home are still paying 8 rupees, 9 rupees, 10 rupees, 11 rupees. Industry is paying 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So everybody's losing. So that's the sad part of this whole thing. The distribution companies in losses, he's losing. We as power generators are losing. The consumer's losing. And, the OEMs are losing. So it's a sad state of affairs if you think about it.
Well, you just turned everybody in this audience away from wanting to get anywhere close to this business. So, yes, go ahead. Just 1 second, sir.
Produce your own energy.
Yeah.
My name is Arjun Gupta from Smart Joules. I think, energy transition and horizons, the conversation is always about the production side of energy. So I want to ask the panelists, what do they think about the opportunities on the consumption side? Optimizing the consumption side. What do you see as the number of businesses and the types of businesses and the wealth creation opportunity for companies working on the consumption side?
I can take a crack quick at it. First of all, Arjun, that's a great question, because I absolutely agree with you. I think that's going to be the future. Why? If you look at India's competitive in manufacturing, India's industry is competitive in manufacturing compared to, say, China or Vietnam, or even, forget about that, even Bangladesh, right? Our cost of energy for industry in India is one of the highest in the world, right? And that's not going to come down anytime soon. In fact, we are one of the few countries where the cost of energy for industry is higher than residential. Usually all over the world it's the other way around. So therefore, if for us, Indian manufacturing industry to be competitive with the rest of the world, we have to start focusing on energy efficiency in a far, far larger way. Tell me one factory in India that doesn't have a backup diesel genset, not even one. Right? And tell me one company that's not run that diesel genset at least a few times every month, maybe for a few hours. So I think that's the answer to your question. Diesel genset power is close to 15 rupees, 16 rupees a kilowatt hour. So the only way we can start doing is start taking energy efficiency in terms of consumption, whether it's industry, residential, much more seriously.
Okay.
So you have 4 diamonds of the industry. I want to ask all of you, how much of you are willing to put your personal wealth in energy transition, personal wealth? Please put your hands up.
You're looking very meaningfully at me, it seems to me. And by the way, you said...
You wanted a cracker question, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Sorry, one just only, that there is a danger in
So
that...
question, no comment.
No. Yes, okay. How many people of the billionaires, they will remain in India after this becoming billionaire?
Yes. Go ahead, Piyush.
So 7 years.
What is that? Is that your sad look? Is that your happy look? What is this?
It's a cracker of a response to a cracker of a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Personal wealth. 7 years of career plus all personal wealth plus moving from London to India to chase energy transition and to change prospects here on the ground. That's what I've done. I'm here. I have shown the vision to traditional energy majors like NG, who now own our business. So I'm very much here and committed to this sector.
Well done. Yes, Arunabha.
2-part question. One is, the first part is for all the speakers. If we were not discussing this in July and Andhra Pradesh had not happened, this was late June, would it be also morose? Yes or no question. But the second question is this. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Financial Times said that in the London Stock Exchange now, the FTSE has started describing oil and gas companies not as oil and gas companies, but as non-renewable companies. Effectively, it's a turnaround of the tables from when we called Minister of Renewable Energy as new and non-conventional. Now, oil and gas is non-renewable. If the FTSE is looking to the future and thinks that's where the money is going to be made, don't make money here. Why can't you make money there?
Okay.
You know, Arunabha, on your second part of your question, unfortunately, and I'm a little bit of a pessimist in this matter, I think in the Western world there is a lot of conversation and talk about investing in these areas and so on. But if you look at the actual investments that are happening, it's actually very minuscule. So actually, I think there's just much more talk, and this little Financial Times thing of FTSE thing, I think is a little bit more gimmicky than anything else. I mean, oil and gas companies are, you know, so many times bigger than renewable energy companies. And you know how much, for all that talk, how much they actually invest of their capital budget every year in renewable energy? 1%. That's it. So there's no real transition actually among the oil and gas companies that is taking place right now. And if you look at multinational companies or lenders in Europe and so on, which is the heart of the climate change sort of action, you see how much money they lend to climate change mitigating businesses, let's say in India or other developing parts of the world. And again, it's very small. These are still bureaucratic, hidebound organizations that would still prefer to invest that money in Europe or the US or in the developed world rather than investing it in India or other developing countries, even though the bang for the buck in terms of carbon mitigation per dollar invested here would be tremendously higher than what it would be in those countries. But they still don't make the investments here. And carbon in the atmosphere, whether it comes from India or whether it comes from the UK, it's still carbon in the atmosphere. So I think, you know, I'm a little bit of a pessimist on, or let's say a cynic on some of these.
Okay.
Maybe I try a slightly less pessimistic answer to that one, Arnab. I think there are basically two paths forward for the industry. Path one, where we really depend solely or almost entirely on market forces. If we go down that path, I think getting to an energy penetration for clean energy up to somewhere in the low double digits. We have the technology today. It'll proceed at a certain rate. And as the technology changes, whether it's storage, whether it's something else, maybe we get to mid sort of double digits. But otherwise, the sense of balance, if we are depending on market forces, which means to the point from our friend from Telangana, if the policies get to a certain level, then you want to have, you'll get to, let's say, low double digits or mid-teens type of penetration. But if we actually want more than that as a society, then we'd better be prepared to put real bucks behind it, which are non-economic bucks behind it. Which comes straight back to what Mr. Prabhu was saying. If we are able to commit those billions that we are apparently still counting or something like that, then you can accelerate that transition. Because if you're expecting commercial investors to take this to, take India to 20, 30, 40% penetration, or even a Germany or a Sweden or wherever, you're going to get that backlash.
Okay, to Arunabha's first question though, are you, would the conversation have been, or the mood have been very different had we had this conversation in June as opposed to July, TP?
Not really. I think, that's just another blip in the journey. I don't think it's,
Little bit?
It is a little more than a blip, I agree. But what I mean to say is I don't think our feeling today was dramatically different a few months ago. This is not the first time it's happening. It's happened before in other states to us. We've had far worse situations. Also, the challenge, what's happening right now is the uncertainty of what's going to happen. How bad can it get? So that's
how bad can it get?
Now you're getting me into a corner, Shereen. I better watch what I say out here.
This isn't, is it? No, it's not.
No, but it is a big issue. Let's be clear about it. This is a very, very serious issue, and I think Sumant also raised it earlier on. This could set, the ripple effects of this is not only limited to us in the renewable energy industry, this will have ripple effects across infrastructure for our country.
Yeah.
The day the sanctity of contract goes away, Spain did that, and if I remember, Italy did that. And that created a huge backlash against investments in Spain in renewable energy for a long time. So I just don't think that's something that path we should go down.
Yeah.
I hope better sense prevails because forget about all of us attracting more financing going forward.
Yes.
At least that's my opinion.
Forget about the making millions of billionaires. It's not going to happen. Yes, ma'am, I'll give you the final question.
Yes, and I hope that it is a tiebreaker one.
I hope so too.
Yes, so we heard that none of you are making money in this business.
They're not admitting it,
yes.
though. They're not admitting to it.
So my question is, what are you laying your bets on in very, very concrete terms? And what is the outlook for Horizon? How close or far is it for the turnaround to happen? And that's the question that I have.
Okay, so I'll give each one of you a minute each. Piyush, let's start with you. Concrete, what are you looking at, and where do you see the inflection point?
Okay, so I think in my case, I'm looking at the decentralization of energy infrastructure as a secular trend. And I am confident that it is a secular trend and it will play out completely, because that's happened in adjacent sectors like adjacent infrastructure sectors like telecoms and transport. We have utility scale infrastructure and we have household level infrastructure and even personal infrastructure today in the form of a mobile phone. Similarly, in transport sector, we have a household level car, a personal vehicle. So energy is only 100 years behind. It's because of the sort of pace of technology. Today, we are at a point of that inflection where there is an opportunity to place an energy generating device in the hands of people in the homes. And I'm looking at a future where every home will come with its own energy infrastructure, just like it comes with its own plumbing today. So that trend, we firmly believe, is here to stay, and that's what I'm here for.
Well, 60 seconds there for the motion. Thanks very much, Piyush. A big round of applause to Piyush. Sumant, Sinha, your 60 seconds for the motion in response to the lady's question.
No, so the question really was about whether we are making money and what are we laying our bets on for the future.
And where do you see the inflection point?
Inflection point for what?
To make money and turn things around.
Okay. Okay, so look, I think the reality is that, there is money to be made in the sector. It's not huge amounts, which hopefully create a much stronger market, sort of push behind, or commercial push behind the adoption of renewable energy along with storage-based solutions in the future. So I'm very optimistic from that standpoint.
All right, thank you very much. A round of applause for Sumant Sinha as well. Vipul?
So we are laying our bets on a sustainable, moderate level of growth, at the level of growth that we believe India can absorb in renewables. We are laying our bets on that speed of growth being not dictated by what our investors who want to take money out want. So you can't get in and get out. So you pace your growth. This is a long game. So you pace your growth, you look for sustainable returns, you don't look for supernormal returns. As Sumant said, this is a utility industry. So that's one place we are placing our bet. I think notwithstanding all the crises that we have every few months, I have great faith in the Indian consumer, that if there is a good proposition, they will pay. I have great faith in Indian policymakers and regulators. Sometimes they leave it too close to a crisis before they act. But by and large, they're not trying to do something senseless. I have great faith that they will eventually act in the right direction.
That's the hope, certainly. TP.
Thanks a lot. I think a couple of reality checks out here. The first one, as much as all of us out here on the tree hugger camp, I want to just put a bit of reality out there, is that coal's not going away and nuclear is not going to go away, at least for a country our size. We do need base load. Whether that base load is 20%, 40%, or 60%, that's debatable based on different scientists, but I think that's not going to go away. So that's number one. The second thing is, however, to answer your question, where am I laying my bets? I think this transformation is real. Sustainability is a big issue. Somebody raised pollution. It's a big issue. So I think the future is going to be around more of a distributed generation model, where everybody will become a power producer and a consumer. We will still need base load because that's what the big industry is going to require. There's going to be huge amounts of technology transformation, whether it's going to be hydrogen, whether it's going to be lithium ion, whether it's going to be battery storage. So a lot of work around storage that I think is going to happen. The fourth thing is around digitalization. I think our ability to improve productivity for assets all over the world sitting out here is what's going to change. So I'd say that's sort of where my future is going to, that's where I think the future is going to be, and that's where the value is going to be created.
Well, for the sake of each one of you on this panel and each one of you in this audience, I do hope that everything that you've spoken of in terms of regulatory certainty, pricing predictability, obligations in terms of contracts being honored, all of that does get taken forward, because I think this is an opportunity for us as a nation and for many of you as entrepreneurs, and I do hope that we will see the return on investments and the return on equity and some of these parameters that probably are making you feel a lot less confident today. I hope that the story is very different if we were to meet tomorrow. So, you know, there was a lot of conversation around whether New Zealand and England, whether that was the right way, there should have been a do-over. So I'm going to give the audience an opportunity here to decide this match. So Team England and Team New Zealand, raise your hands for Team England. And New Zealand? Okay, well, then we're going to have to give it to New Zealand this time around. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us here. At least they won something. Thank you very much for being great sports, and thank you very much to the audience as well. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.